Hello, today we'll be solving by taking the square root. Don't forget to take notes as you go and do the survey. So here's something you need to know before we get started. We will only use this method when there is no b value. So remember the standard form for a quadratic is ax squared plus bx plus c. So this b value right here will be missing. It'll look a lot more just like ax squared plus c. So if you don't have an x value, you can use this method, but if you do, you have to use a different method. So here's example number 1. At the beginning of the year, we talked about how opposites were addition and subtraction, multiplication and division, and also how square and square roots were opposites, but we never really did anything with that. Now we're going to do something with it. So here we have 6x squared equals 486. We know how to get rid of that 6 because that number next to a letter just means multiplication. So we're going to divide both sides by 6. When we do that, we're left with x squared equals 81. Now, we want the variable by itself. We want to isolate that variable. So to undo a square, we're going to take a square root. But we can't just do that to one side. We have to do that to the other. Well, all that does is cancel out my square. So I'm left with x equals 9. But not only do we want a positive, but we also want the negative of that. And the reason for that is because 9 squared is 81, but negative 9 squared, negative 9 times negative 9, is also 81. So our zeros or solutions here would be 9, 0 and negative 9, 0. Here's another example. X squared plus 9 is equal to 59. Here we want to get rid of, just like if that were just an x, we would get rid of the 9 first. We're going to do that here as well by subtracting 9 from both sides. We're left with x squared equals 50. Remember, to undo a square, you have to take the square root. So we're going to square root both sides. That leaves us with an x on the left, but on the right, we get 7.07, and don't forget the negative of it, negative 7.07. So our zeros would be 7.07, 0 and negative 7.07, 0. Here's our next example. Remember, if this 10k squared minus 1 equals 89, if that was just a k, we're going to solve it the same way. Just at the end, we're going to take a square root. So we're going to add 1 to both sides, and we get 10k squared equals 90. We're going to divide both sides by 10. We're going to divide both sides by 10, and we get k squared equals 9. Remember, to get rid of that square, we're going to take a square root. And our answers are not just 3, but also negative 3. So our zeros are 3, 0 and negative 3, 0. All right, example 4. 8x squared plus 6 equals 734. Again, if that was just an x, I would subtract 6 from both sides. So I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm left with 8x squared equals 728. To get rid of that multiplication, I'm going to divide both sides by 8. X squared will equal 91. To get rid of a square, I square root. So x will equal 9.54 and negative 9.54. Notice they're decimals and I'm not afraid of them. We're going to use them and put them as points, 9.54, 0 and negative 9.54, 0. Finally, our last example, 8k squared minus 5 equals negative 149. Again, get rid of the negative 5 first by doing the opposite, adding 5 to both sides. We get 8k squared equals negative 144. Divide both sides by 8, and you get k squared equals that should be a k squared equals negative 18. I take the square root of that. Oh, but if I put that in my calculator, it's going to say error or something along those lines. So our zeros here are imaginary. Anytime you take the square root of a negative number, you're going to have imaginary zeros. Remember that. All right, so remember, you can only use this method when there's no b value. Don't forget the positive and the negative root, and you can't take the square root of a negative number. You get imaginary solutions. So make sure your notes are filled out. Take the survey now, and remember, I don't know is not an answer. If you don't know, you need to go back and listen again. Bring your questions to class tomorrow. Here's the survey questions.